So for those of you that are waiting to start your speaking business to learn PowerPoint, you want to watch this very closely. And for those of you that have become dependent on PowerPoint, you want to watch this very closely. And all the rest of you, you might want to watch this very closely. So everything that I show you is on the handout in front of you, one sheet. 81% in 100 books. 81% of Americans say that they think they have a book in them. There's been a lot of x-rays and CAT scans and MRIs, and no doctors have found any books in any people yet. But out of those 81%, what percent actually write a book? Less than 1. And out of those 1% who write books, and last year there were 75,000 new books published, released. There was about 100 of them that really made it big. That's good news. There's a great opportunity, but it will require a certain level of tenacity. Now, I want to start by asking you a simple question, probably the shortest question in the English language. Why? Why do you want to write a book? There's really only one reason to write a book. 2 words. You might want to write these 2 words down. Pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure. You're going to write a book that's going to alleviate people's pain, or you're going to write a book to show people how to create more pleasure in their life. That's the only 2 reasons to write a book. Now, if we ask why, we also need to ask, why not? Why not? A good reason to not write a book is because you have a fascinating life story. Let me tell you a fascinating life story. By the time I was 19 years old, I had been arrested 3 times for drug possession. The last time resulted in mandatory prison. By some kind of act of God, I didn't go to prison, but I did end up in an intensive treatment program for a year and a half. Graduated from that program at the top of the class. 6 months later, I was out in the streets addicted to methamphetamine and cocaine. At 21 years old, I had to move back in with my parents. I was depressed, I was despondent, and highly delusional. Now I'll stop the story right there. It's a fascinating story, isn't it? It's true. There's one problem with that story. It's all about me. People don't buy books to read about me. People buy books because they want to know about them. So the new radio station in town, some of you are familiar with it, you've heard it before, WIIFM. What's in it for me? Anytime you write a book, you better be answering that question for your reader. In fact, if you can answer it before they can ask it, you have an opportunity to sell a lot of books. However, there's this thing called ego. But the good news is there's also a thing called God. Now, I'm not here to preach any kind of religion. In fact, that's a dangerous kind of idea if you think about it. I don't have any degrees in theology or divinity or anything like that. Some really smart person came up with an acronym for ego, and it said, edging God out. Edging God out. The biggest addiction we have in U.S. today, I would say the addiction to the person in the mirror. I know I'm a recovering egomaniac. Some days my recovery program is working better than others. Some days it's not working so good. But the G-O-D, gifts of desperation. Sometimes we have to get hit to our knees, and we literally ask that question. Okay, I don't know who's up there, I don't know how this prayer thing works, but I sure could use a little help right now. And when we ask that question, sometimes G-O-D shows up. It's called good orderly direction. And in that good orderly direction, you might want to look for a secret weapon. I had a secret weapon. I wrote Marry Yourself First in 2005. And my secret weapon was Ivy. Ivy was my book coach. I quit writing Marry Yourself First at least 20 times. I call up Ivy, I said, I quit, I'm not going to do it. I hate this book sucks. She said, Ken, people need to hear your message. And every time she would say that, you know what happened? I would cry, and I would start writing again. She was my editor. She typeset it. She put it in the software format. She helped me find a designer for it. So if you're planning to write a book, I would highly recommend that you get a book coach involved, somebody that's been there and done that. You also might want to consider the Beatles' philosophy. The Beatles' philosophy in their one song says, I get by with a little help from my friends. Now I know the next line says I get high with a little help from my friends, but we're just going to leave that line out for right now. I get by with a little help from my friends. Marry Yourself First, best I can count, had no fewer than 43 people that helped with it. There was only 3 people that got paid though. I gave people chapters and asked them to read them. And I asked for feedback and input. And those 40 people who volunteered to help me out, those 40 people that helped me get by, when I had my book launching party, you better believe they were there. They opened this book up, they were showing their friends. That sentence right there, I gave him that sentence. And they did. There's no reason why I should have my name on the front of this book. This book ought to have about 50 names on the front of it. So we get by with a little help from our friends. Now this is confusing, the English language, right? Here's the deal. If you're going to write, you have to figure out what rituals work best for you and be consistent with them. Personally, for me, I'm an early morning writer. I was up at 3 o'clock yesterday morning putting together this program. I'm also a little bit of a procrastinator, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We'll postpone and talk about that later. But figure out what your prime time is, and then you have to make sure you find the time to write. If you keep saying, I don't have time, guess what? You'll make that happen too. It has to become a priority in order for you to get it done, in order for you to deliver it. All of which brings us to Merlin time. It's said that Merlin's magic was that he lived from the future into the past. Now, those of you that are seriously left-brained and you're trying to wrap your head around that and you're immediately going, there's no way that can work. No kidding. It's a fictional story, okay? Just let it go. But do this. Before you start writing the book, 2 very important things. Where is it that you want it to take you? What's that look like, sound like, feel like? And make sure it's really, really big. And before you start writing the book, the very first thing for you to write is the back cover. Why? Because researchers have found when people go to a bookstore, if they like the way the front cover looks, they spend about 3 seconds there, and then where do they go? They flip it around and they look to the back cover. If they spend more than 5 seconds on the back cover, there's a good chance they're going to buy that book. So start with the end first, as Stephen Covey says. There are, however, 2 necessary books that you are absolutely positively going to have to read before you get started. And are you ready to write this down? You don't have to write it down. You already have both of them. Your checkbook and your appointment book. Because your checkbook and your appointment book are going to show you where your priorities are. And if you don't have the time and some money, you're not going to write. It's impossible. It's going to require an investment of both time and money. And if you don't have it, that's okay. Maybe it's not this year. Maybe it's next year. But make sure you read these books. If you don't, you end up being a wannabe. Brings us to the next question. Who is Seth? Anybody that's their last name starts with G-O-D? I want to find out about this person. Seth Godin. Seth Godin, number one, he's written a lot of very good New York Times best-selling books. But what's really fascinating about Seth, you don't have to buy his book. Just get on his blog and have his email sent to you every day. He's got such a pulse on what's going on in the world and how to market and how to be innovative. When he released The Purple Cow, this was in the first batch, the first 5,000. It came in a milk carton that was the same design as this. I kept that milk carton for years. And then after a while, I was like, I don't even know what to do with this milk carton, but it was so fascinating. It was such a remarkable way to market, and that's what Seth talks about. The next question. I said no questions. There's some part of that you guys didn't get. I knew there would be one person that always one. You know? It just means he's really assertive. He's a great speaker. That's all it means. You know, speakers, we have a hard time being quiet. Which brings us to the next question. Whose pointer? Dan Pointer, thank you very much. And whether or not you're going to self-publish, which by the way, I am all about self-publishing, regardless of what Jeffrey Gitomer says, or you're going to publish traditionally, or you're not going to publish at all, you should read his book, and it's entitled, of all things, The Self-Publishing Manual. This is a great guide for how to create a business. Just happens to be about the book business. He's been around forever, and he knows a lot. The next question is, who's Judd? No, it's not one of the singing family. It's not that one. It's a gentleman by the name of Brian Judd, and he wrote a book that's entitled Beyond the Bookstore. This is a fascinating book because it's all the places where you can sell books outside of the traditional. And there are actually more books sold outside of bookstores than there are sold in bookstores. Hello. You might just want to find out what that's all about. Now, that being said, if your ego is involved and part of your goal is to be a New York Times bestseller, then don't buy that book. Because a lot of people that are using his strategies, they are selling literally millions of books to corporations, but they're not going to end up on the New York Times bestseller list. So you have to ask yourself at some point in time, do you want to be a New York Times bestseller or do you want to be a millionaire? It's your choice. It doesn't matter to me. It's ego or money. It's one or the other. You don't get both usually. And you have to be able to have the joy of rejection. Just out of curiosity, by a show of hands, how many of you did not this past month receive a personal letter from the White House? Raise your hands if you did not. That's what I thought. I want to show you something I did.
Wow.
I got a letter from the First Lady's office.
Wow.
I sent her a copy of my book a year ago. Now, I sent her husband a copy at the same time. I haven't heard from him yet. I hear he's been busy the last year. That's a rumor, at least. And in the letter, they said, no, thank you, please. She doesn't have enough time. Well, you know, when you get a letter like that, the first thing you do is you get on the phone and you call Oprah, and I did. And I called Oprah up. I said, Oprah, what are we going to do about this? You know what Oprah said? Absolutely nothing. She didn't answer the phone. But if I didn't have a book, I couldn't have made either one of those contacts. I couldn't tell this story. But I will tell you this. I've been on TV no fewer than 20 times. I've done a number of radio interviews. I've been in the Tampa Trib, the St. Pete Times. I've been on NPR. I've been invited to speak a lot of places because of the book. Next question is POD versus TRAD. Print on demand versus traditional printing. And let me just tell you how it works. 2005, this is a hardcover book. I had 2,000 of these printed. It cost me about $2.50 each just for the printing. So do the math, that's about $5,000. I had 1,000 of these printed. This is a workbook, about $1,500, $1.50 each. So it was about $6,500 it cost me. On December 23rd, 2005, I had all these books delivered to my house. I was the only person in Tampa Bay that had 3,000 books under their Christmas tree that year. And I sat on top of those books. I made a big throne, and I was having so much fun. And then it occurred to me, oh, I have 3,000 books. What am I going to do with them? The phone wasn't ringing. Oprah wasn't inviting me on her show. Nobody was knocking down my door to buy them. I had no marketing plan. I didn't even have a website.
Wow.
Ready, fire, aim. Okay? And when you ready, fire, aim, you shoot toes off sometimes. Now, I had to scramble because at that point, then I read Dan Pointer's book, and I would suggest you do it on the front end. I'm going to let you learn by my mistakes. And so I did that. I sold all of those. I sold another 2,000 copies the traditional way. And then I realized I don't want to buy these thousands of books at the same time. So now I have a revised edition. It's a soft cover. It cost me about $7 each. It's much more expensive, but I can order one at a time. I can order one at a time. Printellectual. Don't worry about the spelling. It's on your handout. Printellectual. If you want to find out how much it'll cost to print a book, you go to Printellectual. You put in it how many pages you think it's going to be, what kind of cover, hardcover, soft cover, what kind of paper, what kind of stitching. It'll tell you all about the options and what they mean and so forth. And then you press the magic button, and within a week, you'll start to get estimates from several different printers. It's a really cool service, and it's free. How much is it?
Free.
Yeah, people like free stuff, and it's really amazing. And that's actually how I found the printer that did the first version of Marry Yourself First. But that brings us to Vervante. What's it called?
Vervante.
Isn't it cool just to say it?
Yeah.
Vervante now are the people who do the self-publishing. And I had some very specific criteria. I not only wanted to be able to print the book, but I wanted somebody that could also do the audio. And they do my audio too. 2 years ago I released the audio version. So they do it print on demand. I can order one at a time. The other thing I was looking for is somebody that did distribution, which means they would get it into the catalogs. There's 2 primary catalogs that the bookstores buy from. There's Ingram and there's Baker and Taylor. Vervante is hooked up with Baker and Taylor. So Marry Yourself First is now in Barnes & Noble, although there's usually only 1 copy at a time. And I tell people, look, if you want a copy, you better go fast because they sell out all the time. I mean, they hardly ever have them on their shelves. So you better get there. In fact, you might even want to order ahead. And sometimes if I have a few extra minutes, I'll call up Barnes & Noble several times in a row and I'll ask for my book. And I'll say, could you guys order a couple extra of those? It's the old Wayne Dyer trick. He used to do that when he first started writing his books. He'd call up the bookstore and they'd say, no, we don't have it. He said, you should order it because I want to come and get it. So I just want to remind you that you're not an artist, okay? And what I mean by this is don't get into trying to do the cover design yourself. I did, because, you know, I'm a photographer, and I have cool photos. And I figured I'd put one of my photos on the front, a photo of me. Don't do either one of those, a photo of you or your own. Let them do the artwork. Under and over, always under-promise, over-deliver. There's a little star right here, and it says free bonus. This is not really a book, it's a key, and it unlocks a personal empowerment monthly teleseminar program. Every month I do a teleseminar only for people who have the little star. So they get a free coaching program when they buy the book. That's a lot more than $27 investment in the book. So always, always, always under-promise, over-deliver. So once you've figured out what your purpose is, what it is that you're doing, it's important that you stay on purpose. Then you want to make sure you also repurpose. As you notice, I have 2 microphones here. One's recorded me. I also have a video camera. What if I told you is that there's going to be an e-book from this presentation by Monday? I'll have my transcriptionist transcribe this. She'll send me back the transcribe. I'll be able to edit it. And then I go to Amazon and I can post it on Amazon and we can have an e-book by Monday. How about that? That's called repurposing. You don't like to write? Well, then don't write. Record it. Have somebody interview it. Then have it transcribed. The e-book phenomenon. Right now, right now there's more e-books being sold than there are hardcover books. I have an e-book on addiction. I'm an addictionologist. It took me 4 hours to make this. I sell about 20 or 30 of them a month. And it's on Amazon. I have 2 other ebooks that are individual websites. They're easy to make. If you're not ready to write a big book, write a little book. The rhythm and rhyme of life, you, and time, it's all about finding the priority and make sure that you're finding the time to do the thing that's most important. If you feel called to write, make it a priority. So how do we measure success? I've only sold about 8,000 copies of Marry Yourself First. I wouldn't call it a big success, but that actually puts me in the upper echelon. I sold more than most people have. But I will tell you this, I did get a phone call one time from somebody and they said, you know, your book changed my life. And that, in fact, they went on to say, your book saved my life. And you know what? That's enough success for me. So repeat after me. Start.
Start.
Now.
Now.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad you say that, so I don't have to say it. Now, as you notice on your handout, it says 18 points. There wasn't 18 points, there was 25, and I'm sorry, I went about a minute over. Always give more. Give more and you live more. Thank you very much.